Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alyssa. I'm currently a fourth year medical student, and it has been a really long time since I posted anything. I don't even remember the last time I posted anything, but I thought today I would just get on and try to share some stuff that could be helpful for some of you who are out there, and maybe provide some comfort in some of the things that I'm going to say. But yeah, we can just get started with it. Today I'm going to tell you about my Step 2 score, how I got it, and then my actual Step 2 test day experience. So yeah, we can just begin. I scored a 270 on Step 2, which is in the 90th plus percentile, which is probably the best I've ever scored on any sort of standardized exam. For reference, when I took the MCAT in 2019, I think I scored like a 508, which was roughly in the 74th percentile, something around there, which was good. It wasn't like a score that would necessarily open doors, but it did get me into medical school. But my approach for the MCAT versus Step 2 changed dramatically. For the MCAT, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just read some books. I think I took a couple of the practice tests and then went in and did the MCAT, but with Step 2, I had a totally different approach. So we can talk about the approach. So throughout all of third year, starting right away during my first rotation, I started using UWorld, and I went through subject by subject. So my first month in surgery, I got through a lot of the UWorld questions. I kind of fumbled a little bit my first month with surgery, and I started doing some of the True Learn questions because I'm a DO student, and we were technically taking the NBOME that month. Sometimes we would take the NBME, sometimes we would take the NBOME shelf exams, but needless to say, I got a little bit distracted and confused and didn't finish all of the UWorld questions, but I ended up doing those later on throughout the year. But nonetheless, my approach from then on was to work on the UWorld questions for whatever rotation I was on. So for my next month in internal medicine, I was getting through all of the internal medicine questions, and so forth. And for internal medicine, I did get through all of the UWorld questions during the month, which is a lot. But I scored really well on that shelf exam, and I just, for me, it worked to do it that way. In addition, I started doing the NBME, like subject specific exams. They have these like 50 question sets you can buy from NBME, and those questions are like similar to the styles that you'll get on the NBME shelf exams, and those are also good for preparing for Step 2 towards the end. Anyhow, for all of the core rotations where I had a shelf exam at the end, I would go through all of the UWorld questions and then all of the NBME questions. It wasn't perfect, like I didn't get through all of the NBME practice tests for every single rotation. Like for OB-GYN, I didn't, and I didn't do it for surgery because I didn't even know about the NBME practice tests until after, but that was kind of my method: UWorld, NBME. And then I would additionally use an ANKI deck. I think I used either Zanki or something of that nature. I could look if anyone's curious, but I used that only during the month of the rotation just to kind of learn concepts. I didn't continue doing flashcards throughout the rest of the year. That's not something I enjoy keeping up with. I'd much rather do questions. So that was kind of my method there. And towards the end of the year, I'd say probably 2 to 3 months prior to my dedicated period, I think probably closer to 2 months or a month and a half, I finished like all of UWorld and I was done with all of that. So then I moved into the NBME practice exams. And when I say that, they have all of their subject specific exams, but they also have all of their like full length practice exams. And I just started doing the subject specific exams that I hadn't quite finished yet. And I found like all of the old subject specific questions from like that they don't currently have on their website that you can just find on forums in different places. So I found all of those. I created a nice little spreadsheet, and then I kept track of all of them. So I made sure that I got through all of the subject specific exams or subject specific questions twice. And then once I finished all of this, I moved into the full-length NBME practice exams. All of this does get really expensive, paying for all of the NBME stuff on top of all of the UWorld stuff, but I mean, it worked for me, so I'm just sharing it. But yeah, then I started working into all of the full-length material. And then I was on a rotation with this upper level student who's so sweet, and she scored really, really well on step 2, and she said she went through all of her UWorld incorrects. So around this time I was like, well, oh shoot, now I'm worried that I should go through my UWorld corrects because she did really well. She went through UWorld corrects, incorrects, blah, 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 blah. So I ended up going through all of my UWorld incorrects as well, which meant that I didn't get to finish going through all of my NBME full-length exams twice. I don't think I got through any of the full-length exams twice. I just did all of those once. But I think I got through all of like the subject exams twice, and then some of the older ones twice as well. Anyhow, I kept track of all of this in my spreadsheet and made sure that I was on a schedule and I knew how many days I had left and blah, blah, blah. The thing that kind of threw me off towards the end during dedicated is that my consistency on the NBME exam, like the full-length exams, wasn't consistent. So some days I would score much worse, some days I would score much better. And I actually realized that a lot of that had to do with not only the content that was on the specific exam, but also like how much I slept or how much I ate. So I found out like if I'm not eating anything, then like my brain just shuts off essentially. But anyhow, that was my method and kind of leading up to the exam. I could get more into specifics if anyone is interested, but the like actual test day experience though was something worth mentioning and something worth sharing with people in the hopes that maybe it will make you feel better if you ever run into something down the line. So my step 2 test day, I think I took it in like the end of June. Yeah, I think I took it at the end of June. Anyway, my memory is just like shot right now. So I take my test the end of June, and the night before I barely slept. I think I slept 3 hours or less than 3 hours, and I'm not even joking. I would try to sleep, and then like my mind just started racing and I couldn't just like settle down. I was just really worked up about the test that was the next day. So anyway, barely slept. I drive over to the testing center in the morning. I left with like plenty of time, but once I got there, I parked in the wrong parking lot and there was all of this construction everywhere. And I literally could not get from my parking lot over to the testing center. And I also just didn't know which building was the testing center because the parking lot was all like dirt and it looked different from Google Maps. And I couldn't figure out where I was. And I think that was just like part of just being so nervous, not sleeping at all. This is the biggest test of my life, all of those feelings. So I ended up like parking where I parked, knowing full well that I could get my car towed. And then I had to trespass across a construction zone. Like I had to like climb this wall, and I had my backpack and my lunchbox, and I'm just like crying. And I found like a random construction worker and asked if they knew where I was going, and thankfully they led me to the testing center. And I ended up being a little bit late. Like you're supposed to show up 30 minutes beforehand, and I was a couple minutes after that, but they said if you aren't 30 minutes early, it sounded like you would forfeit your exam or something. Anyway, I was just like not having a good morning. Things are not going well. And then I get into my exam, and the entire first section of the exam, this guy was just like coughing and clearing his throat like every minute or every couple of minutes. And so my mind would just be like, okay, when's it gonna happen again? And I wasn't really paying great attention. Like I was paying attention to my test, of course, at least I was trying, but it was just like stressing me out, all of these things. So like after I got out of there, after the first section, I ended up telling the people in the testing center what was happening. And then they were actually able to find him like his own like individual room that he could be in, since he was obviously sick and coughing and whatnot. So yeah, all of that said, I didn't feel great about the prospect of my exam, but I got out of my exam and I actually felt pretty good about it. I didn't feel like bad by any means. I actually felt like that wasn't too bad. Like that was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. It felt a lot like the NBME questions that I was getting. And really it seemed to play to a lot of my strengths. So then I did this thing that I do where I like went onto Reddit, and then Reddit people are like, oh, I felt so bad after taking step 2, and then they ended up like crushing it. Or people were like, oh, I felt really good after taking step 2, and I ended up scoring way worse than I thought I was gonna score. Anyhow, so I kind of like got myself into this weird like frame of mind where I'm like, well, I felt good about it, which means I must have done poorly because there's something I didn't realize. And also I was sleep deprived and stressed and all of these things. So needless to say, if you have a bad experience on your test day, or if you can't sleep, it isn't make or break. And I wish that I would have known that beforehand, because I was about to reschedule my exam because I didn't sleep. But if I would have rescheduled my exam, I probably wouldn't have slept like before the next test. So anyway, that's just a little bit of my story in terms of like my score, and then how I got the score, and then as well as my experience actually taking step 2. So it was a really stressful and scary time, and I just want to say that like you've got this, and it is an important exam and you can do it. And even if things don't look good test day, it might not be as bad as you think it is, or you might end up surprising yourself. And even if you're someone who has historically never scored super highly on standardized exams like myself, it is possible, and you can work hard, and that can make a difference. It just requires having the right approach. So yeah, if you have any questions about how I did it, or if you want to know anything more specific or in depth, I would be happy to share it. I think that I would love to share it. So let me know. Hopefully this is helpful and provides you some sort of guidance or structure for how to go about your third year. All right. Bye, everyone.